Richard shows up.
All right, guys, go quiet. Good evening, race fans, and welcome to weekend 6 of the Herd Summer Racing League. Tonight we have 4 laps of the Watopia Heli route. And in terms of primes, we are going to have 4 KOMs and 4 sprints. The KOMs are at 1.0, 10.3, 19.6, and 28.8 km. The sprints are at 6.3, 15.6, 24.8, and 34.1 kilometers, with the finish line at 37.1. Gordon, the D's are heading off shortly. How do you think is the best way to take this race?
Yeah, they will be heading off shortly. Looks like the field's filling up a wee bit. We've got 16 riders in the pen now, but probably quite an interesting race. With that first KOM only after 1 kilometre, it will give not much time to form up a group, but it will be important to get a good pace up there and group up afterwards. So expecting that first KOM will cause a lot of trouble, and then we'll see what happens after that, whether they group up. But at the moment, we've got about 17 riders in the pen, about 45 seconds to go. Tonight we'll be following John Richardson, which he's doing pretty well in the league overall. Looking at the chart, he's 6th in the league, or joint 6th at the moment, but there's 1 or 2 riders above that have actually been promoted to Cat C, so I suspect he'll hope to move up a couple of places, but we shall see. The last couple of weeks, the groups have maybe not gone as hard and been going for the prime, so they are getting the hang of the series and the points. Whether we'll see the same with this one, I'm not so sure. With that first KOM so short into the ride, but we shall see. 8 seconds to go, so we'll just give it a second, see how they go out the pen, and then I suspect they'll be straight into that KOM, and the legs will be burning straight away. But John, first out the pen, in first place, so flying out. They're not too bad, 2.5 to 3. I don't think there's anyone really sprinting out this pen at the moment, so we'll see how they group up in a second before they hit that KOM. Yeah, back to you, James.
Thanks, Gordon. So I'm paying very keen attention to the D's tonight, seeing as apparently, according to Zwift, I am now a D racer. So I'm looking forward to my D race tomorrow afternoon with yourself and many others. And we're also looking forward to seeing how Steve Pritchard gets on in the C's. And I think, Ed, who are you following tonight?
Well, I'm planning on following Richard Hay. If he jumps into the pen at all, I haven't seen him on Zwift Power yet, or on Zwift, so we may have to call an audible at the last second, but that's the plan. So we'll see how he does. He's not one of the strongest riders out there, so he could be suffering through this, but we'll see how he does, since a lot of this is determined by the KOMs and the sprint. So not all about how fast you are. It's just how well you do on those types of events. So we'll see what happens. James?
Yep, no, it sounds good. Gordon, the D's have got to be pretty close to the first climb.
Yeah, so they're 0.5 kilometre in now. There's a nice little front group here, about 6 riders, including John in it as well. Just looking through the group, I can see a couple of our herd names in there, B. Henry, and I think it's William NG maybe. He's also doing well, and I think John Mayer. So there's a few familiar faces in this front group. They've just gone under the bridge, so they're about to loop round and then start that KOM, which, looking at this front group, I believe they will go for the primes. So the legs will be burning in just a moment. But there's about 6 of them on the front of this group. And if they can set a good pace up here, they can actually probably break away from the rest of the field, because looking back down the field, it is starting to spread out even now. Before we've hit the KOM, I can see 9, 10, 15 second gaps to riders on their own. I can see there's a good look there from Max Szymanski. I think he'll be in category A maybe this evening, or B, but just as they're hitting the bottom of the KOM, so as expected, they're starting to push for these primes. But get back to me in a moment and we shall see how they get on over the top of this. But they're pushing up at the moment, sort of 3.5 to 4 watts for category D, which for about a 3-minute climb, that's what you'd expect from these sort of riders. So they're certainly going for it at the moment.
Yeah, we're still 2 minutes 10 seconds away from the start of the seas, and I think we can see some of the usual names. We've got Larry Japson in there, Lisa Jones, Steve Pritchard, who's making a very late appearance. Apparently, he has one shoe on already, which is good news. But we're still like at 1:45 away from the start of seas. D's are well up the climb, and the B's are still 6.5 minutes away from their start. So let's just go back to Gordon and find out how the D's are climbing.
The D's are climbing good. This front group's all sort of going at a similar sort of pace. They're just on the lower section before it switches back on itself, probably about a third of the way up this climb. But there's no one really made a break for it. I can see maybe one rider. That could be, I'm trying to see who that is. Looks like Becca maybe. It's doing 3.1 on the front, so she's opened up a couple of seconds. But the rest of them are sort of strung out on this climb, which when we go over the top it flattens out or even downhill slightly. So I suspect some of the riders will come back together. But for category D, they're all still pushing up here as they just turn around the sort of switch back corner where it levels back down to sort of 0%. You get a bit of a respite, but then we'll be straight back up for the final, what is probably 500-600 meters before they come around the corner to the finish, the KOM, which tonight I believe we've got 4 laps, so they'll be getting used to this. It's probably one of the slightly longer races that we've had. I'm expecting for these category D, I don't know, maybe about an hour 10, somewhere around that. So we shall see how we get on with that with 4 KOMs and 4 sprints. They'll certainly be tiring by the end of this, so it'll be interesting to see what sort of times they can set up here, or even if whether some of them try and attack, because if you can get over the top of here with a couple of riders with you can certainly push some space and get advantage over some others. Just as we're watching, Johnny has got a second or two gap from him up to the next group of riders. It's probably important if he can catch them. Otherwise, I think he'll find himself falling back to the other groups. But yeah, we'll come around the corner in a moment and get some KOM times and see how we got on. But back to you, James. I believe the C's must just be about heading out the pen.
Yep, they have all shot out the pen very quickly. Usual high-level watts that you'd expect to see out the C pen. Following Steve Pritchard, he's currently holding 400 watts, which is about 6 watts per kilo. So he's pushing very, very hard at the initial stages. So we will see very shortly. He's managing to hold on to the initial group. He's currently in 10th place, and we'll see how this pans out. Obviously, at the start of every race, we've got a massive dash, but it looks like we've got one person off the front, and there's a couple of comments in Zwift to say it looks like it's probably an A-class rider. So the main groups are just settling in. Steve's back down to about 220, 230, 240 watts. And just settling in with a group. We've got a group of about probably 15, 20 riders. And yep, all good. Just 0.7 kilometers. Going to hit the climb in about 300 meters time. Gordon, have they reached the top?
They have. They're sort of well past the top now, half a kilometre past. So John finished, he crossed the line 7th of 3 minute 32 up the KOM, which looking at the primes on Zwift Power or riders, a couple of them in front appear to be Cat C, so we can discount them. So and one of them is actually front. I believe he's probably 6th over that KOM maybe, so roughly something like that. We'll need to have a quick look at sort of John's stats to see if he's better on the sprints or the KOMs, but he looks like he's about 6th, and he's caught with a couple of the riders in the group ahead, which I suggest would be a good idea. So he is trying to just push up to that front group. If you can catch up with them, and then because we do have quite a bit of sort of downhill flat rolling before we hit the sprint, and the sprint is a long one as well, so drafting through the sprint will be quite key. But again, he's back to a group of half dozen riders, 6 riders here at the moment, so I suspect they'll sit like that for the moment all the way around to the sprint. Looking up the road, I believe there's only one rider, which is probably Becca, which has now got about a 26-25 second gap, so it'll be interesting to see if this group can work together to close that gap back down. But at the moment, yeah, they're all looking good. Nice group of 6 here. I think they'll probably stick themselves together even through the sprint and probably till we come round to the KOM again. And then it'll be all the excitement hitting the hill again. But no, looking good, all grouped up and getting there, yeah. The C's approaching that KOM, I would have thought by now.
They are well onto the KOM. They've done the first couple of really hard corners. Steve's done a great job so far. He's currently in fifth. He was holding like best part of 400 watts as he went up the two really steep turns. And we're back to the last 300 meters, which is a little bit steep, 6%, and they're definitely starting to group up again. And just coming up to the 200 meter sign, Steve's dropping back in positions a little bit, but he's still holding 4 watts a kilo. He's back in 8th, but still pushing really, really hard, holding 4 watts. Just coming over to a little flat bit before we have a little bit of a climb before we head up to the banner. So 100 meters to go. Steve's still holding 300 watts plus, 4.5, 5 watts, and coming up to the line in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and over. Steve finishes in 8th place. So great effort. And Ed Finney, I think the bees must be about to head off.
We're about 40 seconds from the start time. We'll be watching David Chandler today. He's a pretty strong rider. His 20-minute power is 4.3, so he should push pretty good. But I'm looking on Zwift Power, and there's some really fast guys on this KOM. A minute 53 is the fastest B in here, so there's going to be some stiff competition moving out. But we're about 18 seconds out, slowly counting down. And ready to see how these guys launch out of the pen here. I can see legs are spinning fast as everybody starts to do the normal spool up to who knows what watts. It's like David's only pushed around 200 off the start here. Well, we'll see how he hangs with it. Bruce Botoff just took off out towards the front. And we got Max Szymanski out here. So right now, just a fairly large group, just going under the Enjoy Your Ride banner. So back to you, James.
Thanks, Ed. So we're going down the other side of the KOM at the moment. Steve is in 12th place with a group of 5. And we can't really see the gaps in front are about 23 seconds. Gordon, what's going on with these? Gordon, are you there?
We should be back now, hopefully. Yeah, we were passed over the 360 bridge now, and there's still this group of 5, I believe, 5, 6 riders sticking together. So they're working quite well. They've closed the gap down to about 13 seconds, so they're looking good. They're just approaching the Italian village, and then we'll have the sprint shortly after that, which, judging by the way this group hit the KOM, I think most of them will be going for the sprint as well and going for the maximum prime points. So it's looking good at the moment. Gap's still sitting at 17 seconds. Looking back the way, there's 25 second gap to anyone behind, and even a minute further behind that. So I don't think anyone will catch this group. It'll just be interesting to see if they go for the primes and then take it easy, knowing the KOM's coming, or whether any of them will try push on and get a gap, which I don't think it's worth pushing on too much to get a gap. You only gain 1 or 2 points on GC, and we've still got quite a way to go. So got back to me in a second, and we'll be hitting the sprints, or we'll just probably hold on. Actually, it's probably just worth waiting at the moment as we head through the Italian village. We're about to turn the corner for the sprint in just a moment, which is not my favourite sprint. It's a bit of a long one for me. 300 metres, I think it is roughly, maybe potentially even a bit longer. I don't know if we've got
360.
360, yep. It always feels like a long one. So I can see some power ups. So the truck power up getting thrown down there. I don't know, can't see who that's with, but just as we're hitting the start of the sprint, John's looking positioned well towards the back of the group. It's not really, well, they're ramping up a wee bit, but as I said, this is a long one. You don't need to sprint from the very start, but They're not quite going all out, but the power is starting to ramp up. I can see some as he throws down the aero power up, and now he's going about 200 meters to go. Looks like he's going full gas now. See a few of the riders in the red or the orangey numbers hitting to 8, 9 watts the kilo up here. Just as we come around the bend, and let's see where he finishes. John looks like he got a third place there, 29 seconds. So pretty good effort there from John. Picked up some more points and hopefully got a few points against people that beat him on the KOM. So he's looking good. Yeah, back to you, James.
Yeah, so Steve's hanging in there in his group of 5 or 6, and they're just about to catch up with a couple of other riders. So probably not too far away from the sprint now. So the first sprint's at 6.3 kilometers. These guys are at 5.1, so not too far away from the sprint. But we haven't spoken to Ed for a while. Ed, what's going on for bees?
Well, we're just reaching the top of the first KOM, and David is currently in 3rd position. Let's see if he can push it a little bit to take 2nd. He's not going to. So it looks like David took 3rd on the climb with a, well, 2nd, I'm sorry, 2:01. 2:01.6 seconds. So a good KOM finish for him there. They're now on the descent, heading towards that sprint at 6.3 kilometers. So good job for David hanging in there with the front of the group. We dropped quite a few people back there. You know, they're all together, and then all of a sudden we've got a group about 10 seconds back. So big spread on that first KOM. So that was a bit of a kicker. So back to you, James.
Thanks, Ed. We are 600 meters away from the first sprint. Steve is currently in 6th place, leading out as a group of 5 or 6. And I would strongly expect Steve to fall back to the back of a group before the start of the sprint. But we're 300 meters away, so we'll see how it pans out. He's got about 5 or 6 riders in front of him. I've no idea if any of them are planning on playing sprint-wise. But we have 200 meters to the first sprint, so not too far away. We're just heading into it now, and here we go. Let's see what Steve does. 300 watts, 400 watts, 500 watts. Hanging on to 500, high fives. Got an aero power up as well. Pushing hard. One of the Canadian Quackers is pushing past him. Martin Green's there as well. Steve's still pushing 400, 500 watts, and over the line to put himself in 3rd place with a 25:49. Very respectable time. And given that we've already had a group over the line before then, that's looking like being a very solid third place. Gordon, what's going on with D's?
Yeah, the D's have sort of all come back together, caught up with Becca as well. So there's one rider, Jay Murrin, just a couple of seconds off the front, although looking at it, I don't believe they're on Zwift Power. But this chase group's going to catch them anyway. There's about half a dozen riders as we're just approaching probably a kilometre to the lap banner, just heading into the home straight now. So they've probably got 2 kilometres till we hit that lovely KOM again, which they're all grouped up nicely. I mean, John's he's getting away with doing low 2s in this group, just saving his energy for the draft, which I think they're all probably perfectly happy with. If no one's pushing the pace on the front, they're going to just save their legs for the KOM because, as I said, looking back the way, there's one D rider 6 seconds behind, but further back from that, I don't think anyone's going to produce much of a challenge. So it's all up to this group. As I see a couple of power-ups going down, a feather power-up. That's probably one thing to note on this course with sprint, a KOM and a lap banner. There's plenty of opportunity to get power-ups, so they could make the difference, especially for the prime sections. If you can get the feather power-ups or aero power-ups, they're a boost, certainly, especially if you're not in a good drafting group for the sprint. An aero power-up will be key to gaining some points. But yeah, they're just about past the line, probably a kilometre from the KOM again, which so far John is looking good. I said I think he was 5th or 6th up the KOM, 3rd on the sprint, so he'll be up there competing probably for the trophies as normal. Which looking to date so far, he's trophied or podiumed in 4 out of the 5 races, so I'm sure he's looking for another one. He's not quite managed a gold so far, 2 silvers, 2 bronze, so we'll see if you can manage a gold tonight. Our usual Friday night, Steve Wilder's actually been promoted. Cat C, so that's some of the competition out of the way. So I suspect John will be looking to push on, see if he can grab that gold trophy. But yeah, we're about to hit the KOM in about another 500 or so meters, and then we'll see how they get on.
Yeah, so the C's are going through the S's at the moment, but I suspect the action's behind us in the B's. Ed, what's going on with the sprint?
Right now we're at just 5.2 kilometers into the race, so we got about 1 kilometer left before that first sprint. 360 meters that's a long one. That's going to be a little bit painful. Right now we're with a group of 9 B riders. It includes Max Szymanski and Bruce Bodorf in there with David Chandler. And David's just kind of hanging in there, holding the draft and letting some of these other guys do the heavy lifting, and he's going to be waiting for that sprint to come up, and again, all the KOMs that we have going on here. So at this moment in time, we're about 700, 800 meters out from the sprint, still on a downhill. They're doing 45 kilometers per hour, not pushing a lot, 170 watts, 2.8. Nothing big for these guys. I tell you, on the hill climb, they're all pushing over 5 watts a kilo, so you can see the struggle there. It looks like Chandler is jumping out to the front at 5.8 kilometers. He knows where the sprint is. We're coming through the little tunnel, hitting the cobbles. We'll be making the right-hand turn here shortly. We're just now right-hand turn, and just up around the left here, the quick left will be the start of the sprint section. So he's still back in the draft. Let's see if somebody's throwing out a bus or a couple of guys are using their drafting boost. And there is the banner. And let's see what David Chandler is going to do. A lot of these guys, I see 10, 8 watts a kilo out there. Chandler's pushing about 7. Nothing spectacular relative to some of these other guys. Now he's putting it down. Okay, so now we're talking 11 watts a kilo out of David Chandler. Pushing hard. Let's see if he can make up some time. There's 5 guys in front of him. He's coming up on the finish of the sprint, and how does he fare? It looks like David Chandler came in 6th with a 24:51 for that sprint, which is great. He's got some good points there. Max and Bruce took him out at 4th and 5th in that sprint. So good showing for the herd tonight. Back to you, James, as we round the bend.
Thanks, Ed. Let's quickly switch to Gordon, because I suspect the D's are on the climb.
We are halfway up the climb, I'd say now, just going round the corner on the flat section before the last 500 meters or so climb. It's got a wee bit spread out. There's sort of 1 or 2 seconds gaps between the riders, but they're all still pushing up. I can see over 3 to 4 watts a kilo. So John at the moment is sitting in 6th place at the moment. So if you can push up here, I think you'll get another good time and hopefully stay in the wheels of these riders ahead. There is one D rider 10 seconds up the road, S. Villegas, doing 4.7, so I'll have to have a check on them if they are a D rider. Don't appear to see the ones with power, so they can maybe be ignored. John looks like he's throwing down the truck power up, which is a bit of an odd choice when you're going up a hill like this at 15 kilometers an hour. I'm not quite sure how beneficial that will be, but he's throwing that down. I saw quite a lot of feather power ups in the lower section of the KOM, but John's pushed up. He's on the wheel of the riders ahead, which is perfect. If you can get over the top with this group, and the second lap, I think will be pretty much the same. But it'll be about another 20 seconds worth of climbing and just see. Although I think it'll be hard to tell exactly what their times are when they go over the top, because we'll only be able to register their fastest time, which is probably going to be from lap 1. But just as John's going round the corner towards the last section, he'll be finished this in about 10 seconds. And we're actually seeing some of the C riders approaching them as well, which I believe they must be on the KOM.
Steve is well onto the KOM. He's just peaking the second of the nasty corners, and he's been holding like high 300s, catching up with lots of people. So he's probably now down to like the last 500 meters. Doing a great job. The D's gone over the line.
They have just gone over the line. I'm just Not sure. Actually, that must have been a better time. John is shown as a 3:14, which is showing 6th place on the board now. So, although most riders don't update their times, it looks like he possibly got a better time on the second time up. So, well done to him. Excellent. It was maybe just wasn't quite warmed up done for the first one. It is very soon into the race. So, he's up the hill, 3:14, good time, and he's just grouping back up with his set of riders. I said there's one rider up the road which doesn't appear to be on Zwift Power and is putting out some high numbers, so I think we can ignore them for the points. But I think it'll be as we were. This group will sit as a group all the way around to the sprint. It will just be a case of now possibly win the C group, catch up with them and see how they get on. But I'll just cut back to you briefly there, James. I think Steve must be near the top of the KOM.
Yep, he's got 100 meters to go. Craig Martin has just flown past him, putting out crazy watts. But Steve is just going over the line right about now. And back to the downhill. So we've got Craig Martin's got a gap of about 8 seconds on him. Martin Green's about 13 seconds in front, and then the gap in front is about 41 seconds. So quite a bit of a gap. But Ed Finney, where are the bees at the moment?
The bees have just crossed the finish banner, so lap 1 down. We're just now heading into the second lap of this wondrous course that you picked out, James. And we're about 1 kilometer out from the beginning of that second KOM. David Chandler, I'm looking on here. He's there's also Justin Chandler in the bees. They're both from Brunei, so I'm assuming that they might be related, which is in the South Pacific. So interesting. I had to look the flag up. So doing well. He's in second position right now, but there's still a group of 9 kind of hanging all together. The next set of B riders are considerably back. We're still sitting here with Max Szymanski and Bruce Bottorff, good membership from the herd. And right now we're just heading towards that climb, but we're still a little ways out. All right, it's all yours.
Gordon, where are the D's at the moment?
We're, I suppose, on the sort of backside of the KOM, not quite before it drops back down, but just approaching that. It has got a wee bit strung out, but this group of 5 or 6 is just about holding together. There is, I think it's Steven Soderstrom's got a 1-2 second gap up ahead, but he's not pushing out big enough numbers to make it hold, so this is just going to come back together. What we got here, I think it's 7 riders, as we see one of them, William NG, putting out 4 or 5 watts a kilo just before we hit the downhill. So I don't know whether that's attack. Looks like Stephen is trying to follow him, but it's an interesting one here. Williams is, and now he's dropped down to 0, so maybe it was just a trainer malfunction going up and then 0, or whether it is an attack. We'll have to give it another 20 seconds as they have just dropped into the aero tuck. You do get a brief respite down here to gather your breath. So just as it's flattening out, we'll just have to see if William pushes on, if this is an attack or whether it was just a quick stretch of the legs down the hill. But they're all grouped up nicely. I mean, on this course, I think with a chasing group of 5 or 6 riders, it's going to be pretty hard. But no, William is still putting out the watts. He's still trying to put up sort of 3.1, but I think he's going to have a hard job, and he will be sprinting on his own when it comes round to it if he doesn't wait for this group. So, no, back as you were. This coming back together, I believe. We shall see in a couple of minutes, but no, looking good. We've probably got the sprint in about another 2k. Front group's looking fine. I can see the C riders probably 30-40 seconds back the way. So I reckon by the time we hit the KOM for the 3rd time, this could all come together, and that might be an opportunity for some of these Ds to jump on some C wheels and gap the rest of this group. Is probably their best chance of dropping some of these other Ds. Otherwise, I see this sticking together most of the way with these riders. But yeah, can you how the C's doing? They must be approaching the D's, I would have thought, the front riders.
Yeah, so Steve's group's doing fine. They're about 7th, 8th position. So just to quickly check back on Zwift Power, having a quick look to see where they are in terms of C's. So we've got a B and an A C rider, so they'll be disqualified. But the front C is David Elliott. He is about 40 seconds. Well, yeah, he's a minute 20 back from the front D. So maybe on the next hill, but I suspect probably on the 4th hill that the the front Cs will actually catch the very front Ds. But Steve's doing a great job. He's currently in 7th place. And having a quick look, the second sprint is at 15.6k. Gordon, how close are you?
Oh, we are at 14.7. Just come over the sort of little rise before we head into the Italian village. So we've got about another, sort of half a kilometre just over till we hit the sprint. I didn't quite catch it, but we have caught up with that rider that was way ahead and appears to only be doing about 1.1 at the moment. So, though they're not on Zwift Power, so we can ignore them. But so at the moment, John is in first place on Zwift out of 17. This group's all together. I think they'll just be waiting for the sprint at the moment, as we're just entering the Italian village just under the arch of the building and onto the cobbles now. So, and it's these sprint times coming up from last time. 29 seconds. He took 29.63 for a third place. So I reckon if he gets anywhere near to that, I normally find with myself on these primes, you lose about 1 or 2 seconds every time you go through the sprint, just as you get more tired. But he's got a perfect group here. We'll just see what sort of power-ups are going to get thrown down. Good opportunity if you've got an aero power-up, but it's a bit of luck of the draw depending what you got at the lap banner and the KOM banner. See your truck power going up there. The Ds tend not to sprint from the very start, being a longer sprint, 360 metres. Some of them you find cruise into it, and about halfway through ramp up the power, because it does take sort of 30 seconds at full gas is a struggle. But I'm not seeing many power-ups, just the one power-ups at the moment. So we're about halfway through, and I can see William NG going for the sprint again. He won it the first time round. Not seeing too much here from John. He is just cruising along in the draft, so I'm pretty sure William's going to take that one first, and probably B. Henry second. There was not much of a sprint there from John, so although the rest of the group didn't really sprint either, so he might have even managed to get a third or fourth place, but we'll have to see at the end what happens. But yeah, back to you in the C's. I think they'll be hitting the sprint any second.
Pretty shortly. They're just going through the last turn prior to the sprint. Steve is setting himself up nicely. Holding 150 watts, 200, high 200, 300s, and pushing on. He's got a truck power up, which will definitely help. 400 watts, and pushing on 450, and up to about 500 now. Pushing on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and doesn't appear to be any improvement on the sprint time from last lap, but that's to be expected. But looks like he was well up there. And he's been overtaking people after the sprint, so it looks like a good time. So we'll see what happens when we do the results later on. Ed Finney, how are the bees doing?
Well, they finished that second KOM. Nobody improved on any times. David Chandler was second across line behind George Fordham. Currently, they're on the downhill, just heading into the bridge. They've got a couple of guys have jumped out in front. M. Frit with the Elatino team is 9 seconds ahead, and then we have a second group here of David Chandler, George Fordham, and the TK. Together, and then the next group is 5 seconds back. That's including Bruce Potter from Max Szymanski. So they put a little bit of a gap between them, but not much. That you can see them in their sights, and I'm sure that this group that's behind them will slowly pull them in. I'm not sure how how this Miguel Fritz going to hang out there, but he is 12 seconds ahead of everyone else. So we'll see how it goes. So it looked like pretty good. He was again. David Chandler was second across the line on that second KOM, but with no time improvement, it's hard to tell how he did as far as the primes go without that update. So back to you, James.
Thanks, Ed. So we're at 16.7 kilometers at the moment, and the next KOM is at 19.6. Gordon, how far in front are the Ds?
So the Ds, this group, the front Ds are at 17.4. We have actually seen a few C riders come through and are about 8 or 9 seconds ahead. So probably not obviously your group there with Steve and the rest of them, but A few riders came through from C. They didn't really cause any trouble with this group. No one tried to jump on. I think they're maybe just going a wee bit too fast to actually get away. So this group's still looking good. 5 or 6 riders, and looking back the way, there's some C riders possibly about 10-15 seconds back. So although looking at timing wise, we're about to hit the KOM, so that's not going to give much advantage. I'd say once we're over the KOM, if you can find a group of C riders, might be an opportunity to distance some of these Ds, but time will tell. It'll be interesting if they can time it right and get over the KOM with or near to the C riders behind, then they'll have a bit of an opportunity to draft them and open up some space. But coming down to the line now, 5 or 6 seconds, looking absolutely perfect, but don't know if we want to cut back to Ed there. I believe the Bees are probably about hitting that sprint.
Coming up just around the corner, you're right, Gordon. We've got that, we're just coming past the cobblestone type material, hit the pavement, and just around the left here, we can see the green start banner. People are taking off. George Fordham has taken off. David Chandler still pulling about 6. Bruce Bottoff 8.7. These guys are throwing down 7-8 watts per kilo. I see feathers. I see buses. Everybody's. I see arrow helmets. Everyone's throwing out everything. Chandler seems to kind of wait until the last, nearing the end before he kicks in, but here he's still pushing almost 8 watts a kilo. No improvement in time, so hard to say. It looks like he was about 5th across the line with this group. Again, we'll see how those primes roll out, but still holding basically with the lead group. They did catch up to McGill Friet, so just the group of about 5 of them here, and we have completed that second sprint. So back to you, James.
Thanks, Ed. We are just over the lap banner for the second time, so it's actually halfway round. 18.5k done, and the next climb is at 18.6. Oh, sorry, 19.6. So I've got a kilometre to go. So Gordon, the Ds must be very close to that climb.
They are, yeah. I think you said 19.6. We're at 19.1, just going under the bridge before it loops round and the start of the KOM. So, looking good. Still, this group of, how many riders have we got here? I think it looks like 8 riders, which we have held together very well for the first 2 laps. I suspect that might split up a wee bit as the slower, well, not the slower, but the rest of the C riders come through. That first bunch of C riders weren't much help to the draft, but there's another group probably about 40 seconds back, which I can see. It looks like Lisa Jones, S. Henry, Ben in that group. So if the D riders were a 40-second advantage up this hill, I don't know how they compare on times between D's and C riders. But as I said before, if they can time this right and grab that C group over the top of the hill, they can maybe pull some distance on the rest of this D group. Otherwise, I can see them just sitting together and be together for the rest of this race at the moment. But just hitting the bottom of the KOM, I can see John. I mean, they're pushing up to 4. Quite often they push hard right in this first corner, which is the steepest part of the KOM. Up 3-4 watts a kilo, which if they can hold that for a few minutes, they'll set a good time. At the moment, John is still sitting at 6th, which is his last lap was the best. So we'll see if he can improve it again. I can see a feather up being put down. He's the only rider so far, so whether the other riders have got aero parts and other stuff to save them for the sprint or just later on, but going up this hill, just following the rest, absolutely fine. But yeah, I believe the C riders are probably not far behind now. Does it look like they're going to catch them on this hill?
Yeah, the C riders well onto the climb now. They're just coming around the second corner. You can see a number of C riders just in front, so not too far away at all. Steve Pritchard's holding a 4.5. Ben Knopfling in front holding fairly similar numbers. We've got William NG in front and a few other Bs. May well catch on this climb, but may well just wait until the downhill. But going well. Craig Martin obviously is pushing. But Steve Pritchard is following his wheel very, very closely. But Craig has a habit of pushing very, very hard in the second half. So we'll see how this one pans out. We're still 10 seconds behind the Bs. Sorry, Ds even. We'll see how this one goes. Back to you, Ed.
Yeah, so the B riders are just coming up on the finish banner again for the completion of lap 2. Looks like they'll complete it just under 28 minutes, so that's a pretty good clip there. Their overall time will be under 1 hour. Currently 40 seconds behind some of the main first group of C riders. Everybody PR'd that, by the way. There's confetti going everywhere right this second because these guys are moving. So we are a little over about a kilometer out from that KOM again, and we'll just start the climb up shortly, but we'll jump back in when we hit it.
Thanks, Ed. So just a quick shout out to Becca in the Ds. It's Becca Numier, who is the partner of Stuart Barrington, and she's doing her first race tonight and doing a fantastic job in the Ds. As we say that, Steve Pritchard is sprinting all the way to the line and looking for first place on the third climb. No improvement on his best time, but I suspect that he probably set the best time of the third lap. We'll definitely see how the results pan out. Gordon, we're at 20.6k. Where are the Ds?
They are now right behind Steve, just as you mentioned, Steve was sprinting there. That was to the top of the KOM and past this sort of group of Ds. So we're a bit strung out at the moment. John's managed to kick on a wee bit and managed to get on, looks like, the wheel of Ben Nuffling, Lisa and Scott Henry, I believe. Looks like Steve's about 4 seconds ahead. So he's done well at the moment. He's managed to find the wheel of the C Riders. Looking back the way, that's probably going to distance 1 or 2 of the D Riders if that gap carries on. So it's a good move there from John. He'll get away. And obviously the C Riders will give a better draft through the sprint at higher speeds. So he's doing perfect at the moment. He's seemed to merged in with a group of the C group. And it'd be interesting to see whether he manages to catch up with your group of Steve and whatnot. But looking at this little group, there's John and Steve Soderstrom and William NG in the group. The D Riders that didn't quite, even 1 or 2 seconds over the top of that KOM behind, looks like they're drifting back the way. So good move here from John as we're catching up with some others. Becca's also in this group, so we must have about 8 riders now together. I suspect they'll probably hold together till we hit the sprint, and then there'll be the next opportunity to pull apart. But no, John's looking absolutely great here. I don't know, does it look like Steve's group's going to pull away, or are they getting sucked back in?
No, it looks like a group of 3. We've got Martin Green, Steve Pritchard, and Craig Martin. Just trying to see if they hang together. Yeah, it looks like they will do. So it looks like this group of 3 just going over a little bit of a ramp before we go back downhill, back to a minus 2% gradient. And they appear to be hanging on together. Gap in front is about 44 seconds. Steve currently in 6th place, doing a great job so far. And back to Ed on the Bs.
Yeah, so we're just at the top of the climb. A lot of feathers flying out here. David is currently in 2nd position behind George Fordham, as far as 5 seconds back from him. As far as first over the line, but we won't know as far as times go until it primes, but I'm going to assume he probably did fairly well. So far, he's taken 2nd in the Bs on both KOMs. So good points there. Probably in the top 10 for the sprint. So we are currently on the descent. So back to you, Gordon and James.
Gordon, how are the Ds doing?
The Ds, I mean, John's back in this group. It's a mixture of Ds and Cs. There must be about 10 riders in it. So quite a nice little mini peloton we've got here. We've got that Steve's group, as you said, with 2 or 3 riders, which they have got about 11 or 12 second gap. I would have thought, or the possibly the chance of catching them up. It depends how much the Cs in this group want to work. Certainly the Ds aren't going to do much work towards closing that gap down. This is the front of the Ds in this group, so It's really dependent on whether the C's want to try and catch that front 2 or 3 riders, and at the moment the D's are just going to sit in and do as little as possible and use these C riders to actually gap the riders further back. But it's looking like a very nice group. There's about 10 of them in this group. John's sitting at the back of it, in the middle of it, but they are being made to work harder than they were the first couple of laps. I can see them having to push up to 2.5 and whatnot every now and again just to hold on, because looks like some of the C group are trying to close down that gap to Steve and the other riders, which be interesting. I mean, there's this group must be 10 or 12 riders. They've certainly got the draft and the peloton advantage over the group in front. So interesting if they catch or not. I don't know. Can you see them coming up behind? Are they going to catch Steve's
Yeah,
group?
no, they look pretty close. They're only 5 seconds back. So we've got this group of 3 riders: Steve Pritchard, Craig Martin, and Martin Green. And the gap's closing all the time. So fully expect the gap to close and be back together for certainly the sprint and probably the end of the lap. So
It looks like I think the C's from this group have just pushed up. Obviously, noticed that it's a good opportunity to catch, and John has actually pushed up 4.5 watts to stay with that group as well. So I'm just wondering if he catches out any of the D riders. We'll see once we get over the top of this hill whether it all just forms into one peloton at the front or whether they caught out any of the D riders on that little incline. But we'll see in a moment when we get round to the sprint.
yeah, so quickly back to the B's. Ed, what's going on?
So we're continuing down the hill. We haven't quite hit the S's yet, and that second or the third sprint. But you know, you can see the strategy going on tonight. Out in the kind of flat, the downhill, people are just kind of tucking in, running 2 to 2.4 watts per kilo. Nobody's really pushing hard. You know that your finish position is important because what is 100 points or 200 in this one, 200 points there. But most guys are saving their energy for the KOM and the sprint. So currently, David's probably taken second place on the 3 KOMs and done fairly well on the sprint. So if he can hang with this front group near the end, I mean, he should really rack up some good points. I think he's doing it's a good strategy. There's a group of 7 of them kind of all sticking together. And again, nobody out there really pushing hard during this segment. They're keeping all of their energy ready for those KOMs and the sprints. And so we'll just see how all this strategy works out for them. But currently, we're just in the flats heading to the next. The sprint is at 24.8, so we're still a good 1.5 kilometers out. So we can jump back in here in a moment when we're on the sprint.
So speaking of sprints, the C's are on the sprint, and Steve has dropped the truck and he's pushing hard. I suspect he's probably going to finish middle of the pack in this one, just because there are a few guys who push past him. But again, we will see what happens when the results come in. But yeah, a reasonable sprint from Steve. He's got just over 1 lap to go, and we'll see how it pans out. S is to come, and what's going on in the D's, Gordon?
Yeah, so John in the front of the D's were in that same group for the sprint there. Although John didn't really put much of a sprint in, so he has been distanced by 1 or 2 seconds. I can see, check the name, James Hunt it is, and it looks like William Ng. I've just opened up a gap of maybe 4 or 5 seconds. I don't know if those 2 riders can hold on to the wheels of the C's, and John might find himself caught out here, but just as he's pushing up the hill before the SAZ, he is doing 4 watts a kilo now to see if he can catch up, which I think is be worth him trying to get on that wheel before we hit the SAs to get a good draft through, because looking back the way, there's not too many D's further behind, or even in C groups. It is another minute or nearly 2 minutes for an actual a group of C riders to catch up. So if you can get with these riders, he's caught up with the 2 D riders, but it looks like the C's have all dropped them, I believe. Unless you can see any D riders with the C group, but I believe the D's are back to all riding alone. So it worked out well for the D's. They managed to drop a couple of the other D group, but we do have a nice little mini peloton of 4 riders here, which I think will be back to business as usual, round past the lap banner before we hit the KOM again, and then possibly see if we can get any splits, whether any of them will go for attacks or not, or just save energy for the sprints. Certainly seems to be taken out of them. John's not really gone for the last couple of sprints, so he might lose some points on that. But if he can gain them back on the KOM, he might be doing all right, and we'll have to wait. Time will tell.
All right, we're just hitting the sprint banner on the Bs. Everybody's taken off as predicted. I'm seeing some big red watt per kilogram numbers here. Chandler's pushing 7.5. I see 9, 10, 8. So currently, it looks like he's in about 4th position with these guys. Hard to say how he's going to end up time-wise. Did not improve on his time, but we'll see how the primes work out. And I'll give a big shout out to Maureen Finney for being out there at 85 degrees Fahrenheit mowing my yard.
Yeah, okay. Well done, Maureen Finney. So back to the C's. Steve Pritchard is still in around about 10th place. Got 5 riders just in front and a couple just behind. And we are at 26.7k. And the next climb is at 28.8. So not far away at all. And we've got these a little bit behind. Gordon, how far behind are these?
So we're, well, now it's officially 26.7 as well, so not really far at all. We are just coming around the last corner before the start-finish banner as we head into the rock arch. So looking at the clock now, it's about 30 seconds, so they're certainly not going to catch up the faster sea riders ahead. They have merged back together. It looks like this group, maybe we've got a sea rider mixed in here as well. There's 4 or 5 Ds all held together. Looking back the way, there's a 30-second gap, so I think this D group pretty comfortable themselves. Just depends what they've got left energy-wise before we hit the KOM and the sprint, and whether they want to try and attack each other. I can see, I'm trying to think who the 5th rider is, but 1, 2... No, it looks like they are all D riders, so it'll be interesting how they get on. We've got John here, we've got William NG, James Hunt, and get Stephen Soderstrom, and we've got Becca as well. So 5 riders looking good, about to hit the start-finish banner for the second last time. See what power-ups we can get, and then we'll be hitting the KOM shortly afterwards. But I don't know, we're looking back the way, there's a full 2 minutes to the next C group, so I suspect this group will be on their own unless we see the Bs come flying through, but I reckon they'll be going too fast. But how are the Cs, James? Are they hit the KOM yet?
Not quite. So they have about 800 meters to go. So they are probably, I'm guessing, about 400 or 500 meters in front of the D group that you've been watching. Ed Finney, how far back are the Bs?
So the Bs are currently just heading down, taking the turn to head down towards the finish banner. There's a group of 7 of them here. It looks like we're just behind a bunch of a pretty good sized group of C riders that we may overtake by the time that the finish banners comes up. But again, we're still on the downhill. We're at 26.9 kilometers, so still have a couple of kilometers before that KOM, the final KOM, and then of course the final sprint. But these guys are moving along at about 50 kilometers per hour. And again, nobody really pushing hard. 2 watts a kilo in here, just kind of cruising, conserving energy, and we'll see how it goes. Currently, David has number 6 position on the hilly loop at 14:02, so that's a really good time for this route. I know that I would like to beat 15 minutes on this, so that's really moving out. But currently, we're just in the flats.
Yep. So C's have just hit the KOM, and Steve has found himself a feather power up, and he's pushing hard. High freeze, 400 watts, dropping down to about 300. 300 is about 4.5. So he's pushing on hard. And who we got behind? We've got Martin Green, we've got Ben Knopfling, we've got Lisa Jones, we've got Craig Martin, we've got Scott Henry. So they're all trying to push on to catch up with him. We are just about to go over the lip of the first nasty hill. So you do the first couple of corners, and then it gets a little bit easier. Martin Green's just going past Steve, and then we've got a little bit of hill again, and we'll see how this one pans out. So Steve's now chasing Martin, still holding 4.5 watts per kilo, just going past Martin again, holding 3.539. Martin's just pulling in front. Steve's not going to let that happen. Pushing 4.5 again, 4.7. 250 meters to go. Martin's still in front. Steve's going to catch him. Steve still holding 350, 5 watts per kilo, 200 meters to go, 7% gradient. Pushing really, really hard. We're just over another lip, so power just dropped down, and Martin's managed to pull in front by a little bit, and Steve's still pushing. 310, 340, 400 watts. Pushing as hard as he can. Martin's looking like he's going to go over Banner first, and then Steve second. Ben Knopfling 14 seconds back. So if these two can hang on, they've got a good gap of 15 seconds. So if these two can hang on, then they can definitely push on towards the sprint and see if they can hang on to that gap. But we will see. Gordon, what's going on with these?
So this D group's halfway up the KOM, which John is right with William NG, couple of rider James Hunt, and is there another rider? No, it's just James Hunt, which I believe is technically a C rider, about 4 seconds up the road. So John's looking good. He's passing one or two. Is that Wyco? I'm not sure if that's maybe a rider lapping or not sure who that was, but yeah, I believe so. I believe looks like a C rider that's still on the previous lap. So he's looking good. He's in second place. He's still hitting this with good power. Judging by looking at the other D riders that are in this group, they've probably done slightly less power. I mean, he's managed to gap them by 6 or 7 seconds now. So I think he's going to get a good time up this KOM. So as I suggested before, he wasn't seeming to be going for the sprints too much, but he might make up the points in the KOMs instead, because even there was only 2 or 3 of that D group going for the sprints on the second or third lap. So looking good. He's about 100 meters from the line. The only issue will be there'll be no one to draft coming through the line. So I suspect the 2 or 3 D riders that are immediately behind will catch them up. And just as we're seeing the B riders appear on the screen below us, so Ed, how are the Bs? They must be right behind them on the KOM here.
Yeah, they are. They're just rounding that top, the turn at the top where it flattens out. It looks like George Fordham's about 5 seconds ahead. George is doing great today as representing the herd. I'm predicting George is probably going to take first place in this race. David is doing fine. He just got passed by TK. But we'll see how the times go. I think I'm gonna throw it out there that George is probably going to take first. David and this Miguel Frit are probably going to be vying for second place in this event, based on how they're doing on the prime. So we'll see how this turns out. But we currently have crested and we're heading down the hill, so we've got a few kilometers before that final sprint. Back to you, James.
Thanks, Ed. So it's Steve and Martin Green are up in front. They've got a 20-second lead on the group behind. So they are looking good in terms of points. They are 6th and 7th on the road. Not too far to go. Finish lines at 37.1. They're currently at 31.4. The final sprint is at 34.1 kilometers. So we've got 3K to go to sprint, and mainly up and downhill. Doing a great job. Gordon, how are the Ds doing?
Yeah, so they're over the top of the KOM now. I think John would have set a good time. Just trying to see what riders are going to come back together. So looks like John's in a group with, I believe, is it Steven Soderstrom? Yep. And as we're seeing a few B riders come flying through, but I don't think there's going to be much opportunity to jump on those wheels, so we're going too fast. But I can see there's a Jay Marin slightly up the road, so John's currently sitting in second place as a D rider on Zwift Power, although I believe Jay Mahern as well is possibly not on Zwift Power, so maybe overall first. They have managed to gap William NG by 3 or 4 seconds, although I do see William pushing to catch behind. And with more B's and C's coming through, I suspect that gap might close down. But John's keeping good pace up here, high 2s to 3 at the moment, where he's noticed William gap by a couple of seconds and just keeping the pace up to try and drop him out. So looking good. He is on the front of this little group at the moment with Stephen and James. William is pushing, see if he catches or not, but we've got some more B's coming through at the moment. But yeah, over the back of the KOM, we've got the downhill, and then we're going to hit the sprint for one more time. Judging by the last lap, only a couple of people went for the sprint, so it could be a good opportunity if you can put a bit of an effort into the sprint. You probably get an easy sort of 3rd or 4th place on that sprint, maybe even top 2, depending how the legs and the rest of the rider are feeling. But yeah, looking good at the moment. But how's Steve doing?
Steve's doing fine. He's in his group of 2 with Martin Green. Got about 1.5k to go to the sprint, so let's quickly switch back to Ed Finney. How are the bees doing?
We're about 3 kilometers out from the sprint, still on the downhill. David is currently sitting in 5th position in the bees. He's about 7 seconds behind Bruce Bottorff. I think that George has taken a considerable lead out there. I don't even see him on the reader board at this moment in time. So, but he's got a small group of 3 racers here. Everybody's in Super Tuck heading down the hill. Again, we're at 31.9 kilometers, and the sprint is a couple of kilometers out here. So we'll switch out and come back in when they're on the sprint.
Yeah, so the C's have got 700 meters to the final sprint, and we are just hitting the cobbles, and then we'll hang a right, fairly steep right at that, and then we will do a fairly steep left, right about now. And then fairly shortly we'll hit the cave where the sprint starts, which is round about now. So Steve's still holding about 230 watts, which is 3.5 watts per kilo. Martin Green in front is hanging on to like 7 watts per kilo. Steve is holding about pretty much 4 watts. I suspect he probably can't. After 3.5 laps of this, he's not looking like him. He's pushing too hard for the sprint, and I do not blame him at all. But Martin Green has now managed to make himself a 4-second lead. So we will see if that comes back at all. But in the meantime, let's quickly switch to Gordon and the D's.
Yes, the D's are just putting out that last incline before we hit the Italian village. We'll catch back to Ed in a moment because it's actually Ed's group that's just passed them here. John had a bit of a push to try and get on. He's actually just about on the wheel of David Chandler, but I think he's maybe just burning a match or 2 much here to hold on to those B riders. As a D group, that's going to be a bit too much of an effort. But although we do see William NG is a couple of seconds up the road and maybe had managed to hold on a bit longer, but I suspect he as well is going to burn up holding on to these B riders. So at the moment, it is John and Stephen. Looks like James Hunt's dropped back a wee bit. And we've got William up the road ahead. But yeah, if we just cut back to Ed for the moment, they're about to hit the sprint. We'll see how David gets on, and then we'll come back to John.
You bet. We're in the cobbles. We're coming up on that final 90-degree left-hand turn prior to the green sprint start banner. You're right. John hung on there pretty good. He's about 6 seconds behind David right now, but he was hanging there for a while. We're just hitting the sprint banner. We'll see how David decides to handle this. He's pushing about 5 watts per kilo, so nothing spectacular at this time, but I've noticed that David is kind of he eases into these things, and then closer to the end of these longer sprints, he kicks it up a notch. Again, without having the all the primes on Zwift Power, it's hard to tell where everybody's sitting. But currently, it looks like Davis is pushing about 5 watts a kilo. He's not hitting it as hard as some of these other guys. I think he's running out of juice too. So now we're heading up and towards the S's in the home stretch, and I think that he's pretty much by himself. He's 11, 12 seconds behind the next group. And I think he'll just hang there. Back to you, Gordon.
So John's just gone for the sprint. He threw down the aero power up, had a bit of a go there. I think they're all feel it in the legs now, so it wasn't a maximum effort, but hopefully with no one else really going too much for the sprint, I suspect he maybe got a top 3 finish. He's sitting in this group with James Hunt and Stephen Soderstrom here. William NG did manage to hold on to that B group for a wee while, but it looks like he's been distanced, but there's a 10-11 second gap now, so it'll be interesting just to see if this little group of 2 or 3 riders can work together to catch up with William, or whether William will hold out through the line, which the gap's coming down very quickly on this hill actually, as John's pushing up to 3-4 watts a kilo, so maybe noticed up ahead that William is on his own and decide to close down that gap now before we hit the finish line. Just to see if they actually just go straight past him. That is a good opportunity just to slingshot right past him, see if you can drop William or not, but William is pushing to get back on, so I think this is going to come back together for our final 4, and we'll probably have final 4 for our sprint finish, but as we go through the S's,
jumping into the C's, Steve Pritchard's got 500 metres to go. He's got a 6-second lead over Lisa Jones, Ben Knopfling, and they're all pushing really, really hard. They're all pushing 4+ watts. Steve's got 300 metres to go. Looking like he will probably hang on. He's got a 2-second lead. Oh, it's going to be so close. 10-metre lead. 100 metres to go. He needs to push really, really hard. Push. Come on, Steve. Oh, no. Oh, dear. He finished probably 10th place. He pushed so hard for the last kilometre just to try and hang on to his lead. And then Lisa, Ben, Martin, Scott Henry, and Craig all pushed really, really hard to try and catch on. But we're all done here. So let's go back to Gordon.
So we're just heading through the S's. This nice little mini group of 4. There's no one to catch. Well, there's a J Marin 9-10 seconds up the road, but if they're keeping an eye on Zwift Power, they know they don't have to worry about that rider. So they've just got this last 4 waiting before we hit the sprint finish, which I don't know. Yeah, there's no one going to catch from behind, I wouldn't have thought. So it'll be this 4 just waiting for the final sprint to the line, which we are sort of halfway through the S's. Probably got about 2 kilometres to go from here, but maybe jump back to Ed and the Bees. I believe David's probably approaching the finish line. How's he doing?
Yeah, we just rounded the corner coming through the tunnel on the descent down to the finish line. David's sitting in 7th position. He's 15 seconds behind the group of 3 in front of him, so no chance of catching them. There's no Bees behind him. So his strategy here would be just kind of coast on in, take his 7th place, and with his primes, hope that that keeps him up in the top end of the standings. So we'll see what happens. Bruce Bottorff is up at 15 seconds from him, so he's done fairly well today. Max fell off the radar, so Max is a good couple minutes back, so we're not sure what happened to Max, but he is not in the running with the lead group here. But David, some of the guys you can see up front, they're throwing down 9-10 watts per kilo. And David's just doing his 2.3, cruising on in, because he really has no one to compete with for the finish here. He will get his 7th place. And we're just crossing.
Where John is coming up to the finish line with the sprints are getting thrown down at the moment. Looks like he's got the truck power up. Sitting in the second wheel, if you can just keep pushing. He's got William NG in front of him, which he's not quite catching him, but it looks like he's probably going to get 2nd overall. I know William's got a strong sprint as well, but yeah, he's passed over the line, 2nd on GC. I think between him and William, we're very close for 1st place, but if he's not 1st, I reckon it'll be a silver trophy. So good job there from John and the rest of the riders.
Yep, and a big thank you to all of our riders for taking place tonight, and a big thank you to Damon, for our usual fantastic pictures, especially the zoom in on all of the sprints. Big thank you to Gordon Sloan and Ed Finney, and I'm James Whaley. Good night and thank you.